I found out about my ex-wife's affair on the same day she was admitted to the hospital. Now, years later, she still refuses to accept my engagement to my fiancé. I found out about my wife's affair the same day she was admitted to the hospital. She is my ex now, but even after all these years, she still cannot accept the fact that I am engaged again. If there were a contest for the worst way to discover your spouse's infidelity, I am pretty sure I would take home the trophy. Like a lot of folks in this situation, I ended up becoming part of a club nobody ever wants to join. The moment is burned into my brain, the way my ex-sister-in-law's voice shook over the phone as she kept repeating, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," while I was driving home from a week-long business trip. I had no idea what she was apologizing for, but after I got her to calm down enough to talk, she finally told me my wife was in the hospital and that I needed to get home as soon as possible. My heart started pounding. I pressed her for more details, but all she told me was that my wife had been attacked. Then she hung up, and when I tried calling back, she would not answer. Let me back up a bit. I met my ex-wife when we were both in our mid-20s. A mutual friend introduced us at a backyard barbecue. She was stunning, one of those quiet, almost too perfect types. It took some time before we officially started dating, but when we did, I was completely smitten. The first time we tried to get intimate, she suddenly broke down crying. That should have been a red flag, but I was young and in love, so I just panicked, thinking I had done something wrong. The next day, she apologized and explained that it was a trigger from her past. 2 years before she met me, she had been in a long-term relationship with a guy who abused her in every way possible, emotionally, physically, mentally. He would humiliate her in bed and then act sorry afterward. That night, she had a flashback, but she reassured me it was not my fault. Since she was still in therapy, we took things slow. It was not easy, but I believed that once we worked through it, we would be stronger as a couple. For a while, that seemed to be true. A year later, we got engaged. That was also when we finally became intimate. I was lucky enough to be able to buy us a house, thanks to an inheritance from my uncle. Things were going well. I even suggested we plant a peach tree in the yard as a symbol of new beginnings, something for our future. She loved the idea. Not long after, we got married, and honestly, it was perfect. Like any couple, we had our ups and downs, but I always thought we had something special. She never went to bed angry. If I upset her, she would gently let me know. I felt lucky. Then life happened. I got promoted, which meant better pay but also more travel. That was when I started noticing changes. She seemed down all the time, was less affectionate, and started keeping her phone glued to her. She even stopped pointing out the little things that used to bother her. I asked if she was okay, but she brushed it off, saying it was just a phase. I had no reason not to trust her, so I let it go. She started spending nights at her sister's house, saying she needed some girl time. The day I got that phone call, the one that changed everything, was one of those nights she was supposed to be with her sister. I remember running into the hospital, barely able to breathe, demanding to see my wife. That was when a police officer, one of the most patient men I have ever met, sat me down and explained what happened. He said he was a friend of my sister-in-law and had been the one to respond to a domestic disturbance call. When he arrived at the scene, he found a man on top of a woman, beating her while she screamed and tried to fight him off. I was confused. What did this have to do with my wife? We were married, she was supposed to be at her sister's. Everyone who knew my wife knew she would never be in a situation like that. The officer looked me in the eye, put a hand on my shoulder, and told me to stay calm because the woman in that fight, the one who had been attacked, was my wife. If the situation had not been so serious, I might have laughed in his face. But the way he said it, the way he looked at me, I knew he was not lying. A nurse led me to my wife's room, and what I saw when I walked in, I still cannot find the words for it. I stood there, frozen, staring at her. Then a doctor came in and explained her injuries. Her jaw was fractured. Her left eye was swollen completely shut, with bruises covering half her face. 3 broken ribs. Then, as if that was not enough, he told me she was pregnant. I could not process any of it. None of it made sense. That was when I saw her sister. She tried to avoid me, but the police officer convinced her to talk. She finally admitted what she knew. 5 months earlier, my wife's ex had reached out to her. He claimed he was trying to make amends, part of some nonsense redemption journey to clear his karma. My sister-in-law said my wife started talking to him again. Then he convinced her to meet up for coffee so he could prove he had changed. Of course, all the old feelings came rushing back. What started as emotional cheating turned physical 3 months later. And just like that, my entire world shattered. Ever since the divorce, my ex-wife has harbored a deep resentment toward her sister. She admits she played a part in the downfall of our marriage but insists her sister pushed her into the affair and shielded her from making decisions that could have saved what we had. In her mind, her sister is just as responsible for our broken family. Things have gotten so bad that she refuses to let her sister spend meaningful time with our son, and at one point, this even drove my ex-sister-in-law into a deep depression. Despite trying for years to mend their relationship, the rift between them only seems to grow wider. A Reddit user, Mama20245, gave me a straightforward but brilliant piece of advice: get a multi-room tent. That way, my fiancé could be included in the birthday camping plans without creating tension. I took the advice and went out to buy one right away. My ex was clearly not thrilled, but at least she seemed somewhat satisfied that she would be under the same roof as me during the celebration. My son, though, he was on top of the world. Running around the yard, pretending he was an explorer charting new lands, he was absolutely thrilled. As night fell, I got the fire going, and my ex brought out the marshmallows. He sat between us, excitedly roasting his marshmallow, completely lost in the moment. What caught me off guard was when he finished his s'more, grabbed another marshmallow, and handed it to my fiancée, settling beside her to make a second one. Watching that scene, I could not help but wonder how something so pure and beautiful could have come from the complete disaster that was my relationship with his mother. Later that night, my ex asked if we could talk in private. I agreed. We stepped into the kitchen, and she apologized for how she had acted the night I proposed, but not for everything that came after. She confessed that, in her mind, I was still her husband, and the idea of me loving someone else terrified her. She told me she never wanted to hurt me and that if she could undo her mistakes, she would. She even said the day we got the paternity test results confirming I was the father had made her the happiest she had been in years. She thought the child was proof we were meant to have a fresh start. I listened, and when she was done, I thanked her for sharing all of that. But I told her the truth: I am happy with where I am now and with the person I am with. I told her I truly hope she finds happiness with someone else. She just looked at me and said she meant what she had told me the day we finalized our divorce: she would wait for me. I left the kitchen completely drained. No matter how clearly I tried to make her understand, it was like nothing I said made a difference. That night, we all went to bed, me and my fiancé in one section of the tent, my ex and our son in another. It was a great birthday for my boy, but for me, it was just another exhausting reminder of the past that refuses to let go. That is where things stand for now. I will update if anything major happens.